Brenden, for joining me today for this little conversation. Just so everyone understands, Brenden is with Global Drain Technologies. He'll give a little scoop on what they are, but ultimately we took them on as a manufacturer very, very recently. So today, him and I are going to be talking about the drains that they offer, but more importantly, the this code about the drain requirements at fire service elevator access points. So Brendan's going to dig into that. But before we get going, Brendan, if you could, maybe just a quick recap on who you are and what Global Drain offers.
For sure. Yeah. So my name's Brenden. I've been with Global Drain for the past 7 to 8 years. Global Drain has been an organization here providing drainage services for a multitude of different industries. For our, purposes here specifically, for that New York Metro, Jersey, down into some of the Western and Southern states are adopting this elevator code, right? So it's fairly fluid over the last couple of years, but it's something that we've really identified as being really a life safety opportunity, right? I mean, these products essentially, can make buildings safer for everybody involved, right? That's for the emergency workers, it's for the residents and the building occupants. So it's definitely something that we've really kind of sunk our teeth in here over the last couple of years, and more than happy and more than looking forward to our partnership here going forward as well.
Cool. All right. And just to be clear, you are not a detective in the police force, right?
Not to be confused with Officer Rodney Farva of either, but it's something I get pretty often, and hey, it's my shtick. I like it. It's what I do.
It's a great mustache. All right, so digging into this elevator code. So I've done a little digging, a little reading into it myself, and I'm more on the mechanical side of things. Not so this drain world is very, very new to me, and as I go through the code, I'm just surprised at just how confusing it can be for a novice like myself. So you want to just give a high level of just what this code is, and we can just dig into it a little bit?
For sure. Yeah, I mean, to put it simply, is each fire service access elevator requires a certain quantity of drainage capability in front of the threshold or within the lobby that these elevator banks are in. And really what that's trying to do is, again, just make things safer for everybody involved. Once water starts getting into elevator shafts, that can start pooling in the bottom of that shaft, create some issues with the mechanicals, with the electrical. There are dedicated sump pumps within those shafts, but again, just another layer of protection with these types of drains. So there's 3 ways the code lays out meeting the code, quote unquote, right? One of the options is kind of outside of our purview. We do drains, right? So when it comes down to it, one of the options is to not mess with, but control the flow rate of the sprinkler system to the point where essentially threshold drains wouldn't be required. Now, as a drain guy, I'm not one to recommend to anybody to temper your flow of your sprinklers, right? It
sounds like a terrible idea.
Totally off base from my side, right? So we focus on two of the other approved options. One is a threshold system, which is essentially located right in the doorway of each threshold into the elevator shaft. The second option would be a lobby drain, right? So these lobby drains can be a little bit more minimal in reveal. You don't really see them as much as you would see, say, a threshold drain that needs to be slightly wider in a shorter format. So those lobby drains can be stretched out over a longer length. That way, you can better conceal them, right? So there's a few nuances between both options.
Okay.
The threshold would require less floor sloping, whereas the lobby would require more floor sloping away from those banks. So really, it's just going to kind of depend on what the building owners want to see out of the drains, how they want to incorporate it into their interior design, and that kind of thing as well.
Okay, so from what I understand, there's a rule about what was it, 100 GPM? You got to have a minimum of 100 GPM that
That's
you got to stop,
yeah.
right?
Minimum of 100 GPM per elevator door is what we're interpreting it as. It's
Why do you
potentially.
say how that's how you're there's not it's not like exactly
Yeah,
verbalized in this thing?
there's a bit of interpretation of that code that can be required, right? It's not spelled out. You have to do A, B, C, D, and E. It's a minimum requirement of 100 gallons per minute. It doesn't say essentially per elevator door. It doesn't say per hoistway or per certain square footage. It's really just kind of we're taking a stance of making sure that everything is absolutely covered, rather than trying to do a bare minimum, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So each of our systems would be flow tested to meet that 100 gallons per minute or exceed it.
Got it. Okay. So now you said there's a couple different ways, and that was the thing that was almost pretty confusing in this code here, because it showed like three different diagrams, and one of them was an enclosed lobby, the other one was like a corridor, and the other one was kind of like nothing going, like just elevators in the middle of a building, I suppose. So the one that's I think the straightforward. I don't know if any of them are straightforward. So. So you got one where you can, I'll say, protect the lobby.
Yeah.
So give me the details of how you would go about doing that. Where would it go? What kind of drain would you be looking at?
So what we've seen in the past is if you have an elevator bank of 3 elevators on, let's call it on one wall, and the opposite side is either a stairwell or it's a feature wall that doesn't have any of these utilities in it with elevators. Essentially, you can use a longer run of our most minimal elevator drain. It's the 2000 series dual slot. So in that sense, you can have 3 of those sections over about 20-foot span or so. That'll have 300 gallons per minute of flow rate. So it's very minimal. You don't see anything, as you're walking into the elevator shaft itself. It's kind of out of sight, out of mind, hidden in plain sight kind of view. The nuance with that is that it does require a sloping aspect of the floor, right? So that floor would then have to be, specified and detailed with that slope away from the elevators towards the drain, just to kind of coerce it towards where it needs to be evacuated, right? If you have these drains, say on the opposed wall, and everything open, the elevator doesn't matter if you drain away from those elevators.
Okay. So if I'm just envisioning it, and I would imagine anyone watching this probably has even a better idea of this than I do, but an elevator lobby, you got your elevators, there could be 1, 2, 3 of them, however many. And so when I think of a lobby, is that it's basically an enclosed area, right? And then where are you suggesting that the drains actually get placed in that scenario?
So it depends on if they're doing a lobby or a threshold version. The lobby can either be, you can have a drain right centrally located, right in the middle of that corridor, depending on the length and how many quantities of doors they have, what the minimum flow they need, right? So there's a few nuances with that. If we're looking at a threshold version, then yeah, it's quite literally as simple as that. You need it in the threshold. However many thresholds you have, that's how many drains you need per floor, right? So one of them is a lot less, I'm going to say, invasive in terms of the aesthetics. But the other option being the threshold version, the one that we offer, is still very, very, very aesthetic at that point in comparison to, the traditional other means that are out there.
Right. Okay. So that is, and we'll get into more of the detail of yours particular one and just what differentiates it. But so, all right, if I'm just understanding it so far, it's complicated but straightforward. 100 GPM, that essentially is a minimum, and you're saying per doorway,
yeah,
right? Per threshold. And so if it's in the lobby, if I'm imagining, just a rectangular lobby like this, and maybe the doors are towards my thumbs, you could have even toward the middle of that lobby, right? And just as long as it's pitched in there toward the center, if you have 3 doorways, you got 300 GPM going toward it, guarantees that you're not going to have any flow down those elevator hoists, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, pretty straightforward. Okay, then let's say you don't have a lobby. Does that differ or anything? Is it exactly the same story?
Yeah, kind of, sorta. Lobby is a loose term, we'll say. If it's a very open concept where the elevators share, say, like the reception area, and that, say it's a luxury condo or a luxury hotel, and there's no area that's just elevators. The same would apply, right? So that lobby would just be on a larger scale, and it's still just dictated by based on how many doors are going into that hoistway.
Got it. Okay. So it's not going to be dependent at all on like, I'd say number of sprinklers or anything like that. It's entirely just.
Yeah, I mean there is that third way of meeting the code. If there's a certain number of sprinklers, dependent on the flow rates and the capacity of those sprinklers, that isn't something that we get into too much. The main factor really is going to be how many entrances do you have into those hoistways.
Got it. Okay. All right. I suppose pretty straightforward. Do you know anything about see, I saw something in there about a radius of 10 feet around the hoistway. Do you know what I'm talking about there?
Yeah. Yeah, that basically is all it's alluding to, is that these drains need to be placed somewhere within that 10-foot radius of that opening. So if you're doing a threshold version, very easily achievable. You're like within a foot away from that opening.
Right.
With the lobby, in some cases, can make it a little bit more difficult, but it just depends on how strategic you are getting with your design and how long that drain actually needs to be, right? Because in most cases, most lobbies are fairly smaller, right? It's not going to be an 80-foot by 80-foot room, right?
Especially in New York City.
100%. You guys build
Right.
up, not out,
That's
right?
right.
So it's yeah, it's definitely something that's pretty easily achievable to be within that 10-foot area.
Got it. Okay. What what else about this code are we not talking about yet, or is there anything beyond the code that you generally have conversations with engineers, designers about?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's aesthetics, right? I mean, the biggest thing that most people reach out to me about is, well, do you have any other finishes? What does it look like? We've got this multi-million-dollar condo complex or luxury living. We don't want this drain to take away from the allure of the aesthetic, right? So that's definitely on the forefront of conversations is aesthetics, but more importantly, how does it work with the building utilities, and how is it going to be placed from floor to floor, right? What's the footprint of it? So the conversations can be very technical, but also, I'm not going to say surface level, but for some things such as aesthetics, it makes sense. You want it to look good, right? So it can be as simple as that. Those conversations can be very short, as say, well, what are your finishes? And some of them can get pretty technical in terms of, what's the encasement needed? What's the footprint? How wide does this trench need to be? Do we need to get structural involved? That kind of thing. So really just depends on how deep they want to take that conversation, to be honest.
Okay, got it. And so I guess talking like aesthetics and things like that, maybe we could just take a moment and I don't know if you don't have a sample there, we could probably like overlay one on the screen at some point. But yeah, tell me a little bit about like listen, everyone knows what a drain looks like, but maybe people aren't familiar with the drains that you get involved in. Why don't you give a little background on that?
For sure. I unfortunately don't have a sample with me, which is kind of unfortunate. I wish I had one now.
No worries.
But yeah, I mean, we at Global Drain, we not started. We did make the first original slot drain system. So when it comes down to it, that was 35 years ago, well before my time at the company. And now at this point, it's been perfected to a point where not necessarily just being used in residential areas. It's being used now in, food and beverage areas, commercial areas, anywhere that a drain can be, a slot drain can be considered, right? So we took that same type of mentality for these elevator drains, being that what's traditionally available is a large, wide pan drain, right? 8 to 12 inches in width, very unsightly, right? You're
Right.
looking down on these buildings, you see a 12-inch wide grate. It's not something that really screams, well, that looks really good, right?
Brandon, what's funny? So it was maybe either you or Kevin, in talk with you guys. Like I said, I've never been a drain guy. Now I can't keep my eyes off them. If I see something, I'm like that one is ugly over there. That one, okay, that one's smooth. I didn't even notice it there. But like when you're looking and you see it, man, it could start to bug you.
It really does. It really does. And I'm the same way. I think I told you, whenever I would go visit a brewery, it's what type of beer do you have, and now it's what type of drains do you use, right? It just gets in your mind, and it's something that now for me it's so top of mind. I'm looking for drains everywhere, right? And the way that we like to do ours is we want to have the most functional, but also the most aesthetic option, right? So we take all of the precautions with getting things formally tested, whether that's a load rating, whether that's a flow capacity rating. But we also don't want to sacrifice aesthetics, right? And that's really where slot drain systems comes in. Is a slot drain is essentially a trench drain, right? It's a trench drain without grates. In these scenarios, specifically for the elevator codes, we are providing heel-proof grate options. So any entrance into that slot is mitigated for heel-proof footwear. So nobody's going to catch a heel or trip and fall or create a lawsuit for anybody anywhere else out there. So again, that kind of leads into what we're trying to do is create something safe, right? Safe, long-lasting, looks really good, and it's going to essentially be a tried and true product for any and all project.
All right, cool. All right, is there anything else that, like I said, that whether it be code or related to the aesthetics or anything else that we should touch upon in this general conversation here, you think?
Um, I know in the future we will have a new release of a couple of products. I know one is very close to being ready for release, and it's really just to be able to conform a little bit better within post-tension slabs, right? Very, very, minimal space for drains in those types of areas. So there is something coming out in the future here that just want to call attention to, that it is coming. Something we're definitely looking forward to on that quote unquote R&D forefront.
Okay, perfect. And I think just what we're going to do next, like we already discussed, just for everybody, is that we're trying to keep this focused. We're going to keep it focused on this one thing, and then maybe next week after, so you and I will chat again on, you guys do have slot drains, you have area drains, you have trench drains, you have a lot of things, and I think applications will be something very cool to talk about next, and we can
Sure.
dig
Yeah.
into some of that. Where should, if somebody wants to, aside from reaching out to Rath Associates, of course, but where should people go if they wanted to look you guys up?
Yeah, for sure. We have essentially three brands within a brand within our company here. So Global Drain Technologies is the overarching company. The three brands that we manage and produce are slot drain systems, landscape drains, and food safe drains. There is quite a bit of crossover between all three when it comes to slot drain. Food safe will be primarily for food and beverage facilities, dairy facilities, breweries, meat processing, that kind of thing. Landscape is pools, patios, kind of a lot of the areas around these elevators as well. Within these luxury living places that, a lot of these services are offered there, right? You got a spa, you've got a plunge pool, you've got, large terraces and walkways around the building. So there is quite a bit of crossover. Slot Drain lives in all three brands, just with different applications, right? Different products for different reasons, and different, finishes, say, of your floor, load rating, all of this kind of stuff as well, right? So any of those brands, Google them, that'll lead you straight to our websites. And I'd be more than happy to continue the conversation with anybody else here as well.
Cool. All right, awesome, man. All right, I think that's all I got for you. So otherwise, we'll catch up next time. I appreciate you jumping on with me.
Appreciate it. Appreciate the time here, Greg. And looking forward to the future here.
All right, thanks a lot, man.
All right, man. Good seeing you.